Moving on to the next pole float series that I like to use on rivers, and this is more of a pronounced type body. Still got more of a taper on the top than the bottom, but this kind of float is enabling you to control and hold back the float more than the other floats that we've looked at so far. You'll see that they're designed with a carbon stem and a good diameter hollow tip. So this type of float, no surprise I suppose, is when you want to use heavier line, heavier hooks, targeting bigger fish or catching a lot of fish very quickly. Again, it's a float that can be used on a whip or on a long pole with a short line. And for edge tackle, this is our N5 series of floats. We've got 6 floats in the range. We got from a 0.5 up to a 3 gram. So it's covering a multitude of situations, a multitude of depths, and also pace. Obviously, the deeper you go on a river, so perhaps over 8-10 foot, you're going to start utilizing the bigger 2 and 3 gram floats. Depths between 3 and 6-7 foot, obviously you can use the different capacities, the lighter floats, and also if the flow is stronger, you need to use a heavier float. So this is a really versatile series of floats, great for fishing bigger baits and targeting bigger fish. So a step up really in terms of the N4 float. And the carbon stem's great, as I mentioned. It's something that you can use on a whip as well as a running short line, long pole. And I've actually set these up today on my CP1000 Top 5 kit. The version that I've gone for here is a 2 gram float. Just thought I'd mention something about the rubbers that I'm using. You'll see that I've got 3 rubbers. So for most of my pole floats, irrespective of whether I'm fishing on a still water or a river, I like to use 3 rubbers. One situated on the bottom that's a bit longer to help prevent the line from wrapping around the bottom of the float, one in the middle, and one underneath the body. And obviously if I'm going to change the depth drastically, I like to pull that top rubber down to enable the line to move over the more pronounced body in this case. But as Richard mentioned in the actual product video, this paint is very, very robust and tough, and you don't tend to get the line digging into the float and causing float leakage. One thing that you'll see is we've gone for the coil type ring on these floats. Again, just to sort of balance with the heavier line, the fact that you're going to be catching bigger fish or a lot of fish just makes the construction of the float a lot stronger. So in keeping with that, the main line I've used on this rig is 016 premium mono, and on some of these rigs I might use up to even 020 millimeter. So where I'm fishing whips to hand for big weights of fish like on the River Wye, I'll often use a 020 main line. On the smaller floats probably 016, but somewhere between there, just to marry up with the right stamp of fish in terms of the hook lengths and hooks that you're using. So I'd be using probably 012 hook lengths up to 016 hook lengths. You can see I do really like the fluorocarbon, the Edge Pure fluorocarbon for my hook lengths. Find it very tough and robust. Really good for when you're catching lots of fish. So back to this rig. Most of the time I'm going to be employing a bulk, and I'm going to be employing an Olivet. So in this case, for this 2 gram float, I've got a 1.75 gram float, and I'm using number 9 shot to trap it and number 9 shot down the line. So the Olivet's allowing me to get the bait down quickly to the feeding fish, or if I'm fishing a more powerful or deeper river peg, I've still got the flexibility to play about. In this situation, I've got the opportunity to bring down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 number 9 shot. So I can make that great double bulk shotting pattern that I keep going on about. In this case, 4 number 9s to make a really positive dropper and play about with the position of the olivette. One thing to mention at this point is you really want to make sure that your hook length is always shorter than the distance between the bottom dropper, or in this case a double bulk, and the main bulk, just to help prevent tangles. And you really want to try and get in the habit of laying your rig in, even if you're catching lots of fish really quickly, just laying your rig in so that everything is straight and it's preventing any tangles on the way down. Sometimes you try and go too quickly and you come back and you find out that the hook is around the bulk. So just bear that in mind. Obviously, even though this is a positive rig, you can make it have a bit more finesse by pulling the bulk up and spreading those dropper shot out. So sometimes even when you're fishing for bigger fish like bream or perch, chub, when you're catching them near the bottom or even over depth, just by increasing that drop from the hook to the bulk, you can fool some wary fish by just getting a really nice drop of the bait as it starts to get down to the bottom. I think that's particularly the case when you're easing the float through the peg, or also where you're fishing over depth and blocking the float and holding it. And this type of float is the type of float that's perfect for that. In all but the most powerful conditions, you'll be able to select a float that's going to hold in the flow and present the bait over depth on the bottom very nicely. And that's something that this thicker tip enables you to do, and also use bigger baits like bigger worms, even half a lobworm, or bunches of maggots and double caster, treble caster. Bigger baits, the more buoyant tip's going to enable you to fish those baits effectively without it constantly dragging under. Again, I referenced it before, but a lot of the time I will overshot my river floats, and I just do that by adding some more number 9 shot, almost like trim shot, to the bulk, so that it's nice and neat. I'm not putting the trim shot somewhere else that's going to cause tangles potentially if I'm trying to catch quickly. But just overshotting the float really does help get bites on a harder day, and basically something that I pretty much always do when I'm river fishing. So hook wise, hook lengths, obviously we're going to increase the hook lengths, be fishing 0.10, even 0.15, 0.16 with stronger hooks. With the 0.12, I really like the carbon match in the bigger sizes. Used down to a 14 quite a lot on the Y when I'm fishing for dace and roach. If you're starting to catch some bigger fish like chub, big perch, I do like the Camazan B711 from perhaps as big as a size 11 if I'm using bits of worm, up to perhaps a 17 when I'm fishing for dace on double maggot on the Y. But obviously I'm fishing with heavier mainline, heavy hook lengths, so I need to increase the strength of the hook to balance my tackle perfectly. Elastic wise, on the N5 range of floats, I tend to go for something heavier like a 6 to 8 solid elastic. Obviously enables me to fish with the heavier hooks, heavier lines, and land the fish really quickly and efficiently. If I'm fishing the whip, the CP 200 whip, then I'll often take out the tip and elasticate that with a 10 to 12 elastic. Really gives, you only need a short length just through the number 2 section, gives that initial cushion on the strike, but enables you to swing in the fish very quickly and efficiently. So I'd be typically using a 6 to 8 up to a 10 to 12 elastic with this type of float. So that's the N5 range of edge tackle floats, absolutely tailor-made for many river float, pole float situations.